Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me for another video. Joe here with Tool Gun and Armory, and today's video is going to be on sharpening edge tools as well as tool modification. With that being said, I have my strop that we completed last week. I have a chisel, a hatchet, and a knife, and this is a timed assignment for FTT106 at Sonoran Desert Institute. So my name is Joseph Marshall. It is July 18th, 2026, right around 9 p.m., and we're going to get started. All right, so here is the chisel that we are going to be using. As you can see, there's just a couple areas, those edges right there, and then a little spot in the middle right there that we can probably clean up a little bit. When using a strop to hone a chisel, one of the things you're looking for is the correct angle. So when you're using this flat backing, you want it as close. I'm kind of limited because of the handle, but you want it as close to that flat as possible. And then on the other side, this is a 25-degree chisel, so you want to maintain as close to that 25 degrees at all times as possible. And then you're going to move backwards on both sides 15 to 20 times, because if you move forward, you could actually cut into the leather and ruin the strop. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. And then we're going to go to the other side. One of the things that you don't want to do is rock. Similar to how I talked about in the file video, you don't want to rock like this because you're just rounding that edge and you want it to be as crisp as possible. So post strop, you have a nice sharp edge. You can actually see that sharpness and see that polishing with the light right there. So when you're moving the chisel against the strop, what you're doing is essentially what your barber's doing with his straight razor against the strop. You're honing the edge and taking out those impurities and minuscule dull areas and making the whole edge sharp again. And basically, just like you don't want a dull razor against your face, the same thing goes for the workpiece that you're working on. The sharper the edge, the more precise your cuts are going to be. It goes without saying, but taking care of your tools makes them last longer. And making them last longer means less money that you have to fork out to buy replacements. And a strop is a very inexpensive and easy way to maintain your edge tools. This is important because the more dull that your edge tools get, the less precise they are. And in an industry where precision is everything, that's a big no-no. The two other tools were the hatchet and the knife. And you might be asking yourself, why does a gunsmith even need these tools? Well, the answer could be more obscure, or it could be super practical. For example, knives. I always carry a knife to cut into packages, cut smaller pieces of fabric off larger ones, things of that nature. Now, a hatchet, on the other hand, maybe you were on a hike and you found a nice tree, and you thought, hey, I can make a really nice gun stock out of that. If you had a super sharp hatchet, you can cut that branch off pretty efficiently, where you can then get it back to your shop in order to make those fine cuts with things like chisels and stuff like that in order to fabricate that gun stock. Proper sharpening of your tools affects that tool's precision when used in gunsmithing work. The more dull or not taken care of a tool is, the worse the product is going to come out at the end of the day. So you always want to make sure that you're properly sharpening and maintaining your tools, so that way you can always have the most precise work that you can have. Sharpening these tools is just a little bit different than sharpening a chisel for two reasons. One, a chisel has asymmetrical edges, and blades typically have symmetrical edges. Also, a chisel is going to have a straight edge, so that's why we were moving straight back, whereas you have a curved edge on this blade. So, for example, you're going to want to start on one end and move backwards across the strop. Remember, not forwards, because you don't want to be cutting into the leather. You're going to move backwards, and then from one end from one end of the blade edge to the other across the strop, just like so. Making sure that you're maintaining that angle against the strop as well, in conjunction with the angle of the blade itself. And you're just going to do the same thing, just like that. Same with the knife. You're going to start at one end, and you're going to follow that blade edge around to the other end as you're moving back across the strop. Now, there's really no special consideration for the geometry of the edge itself, as long as you're maintaining the angle in which the edge was created and designed, because that's going to make that bevel more defined and help it last longer. So in doing this, there's really no extra tools that you need, no difference of a setup, anything like that. But you're going to want to maintain that edge and that angle in relation to the strop throughout the entire process. This way, you would be able to keep that edge as defined as needed. You don't want it down, you don't want it up, making it dull. Nice wheelhouse right here. I would maintain this edge angle by holding closer to the blade. This will allow me to kind of gauge and feel where that angle is. And trust me, there's definitely a defined bevel and a raised section where it goes to this black finish versus the beveled edge. You can definitely feel it in your fingertips as you're moving it. So I would just continue to keep that angle, not getting my hands in the way of the sharpened edge. And I would be able to maintain that angle with pressure from that control hand. Moving into modification planning. The modification that I'm planning is shaping a stock in a future course, and I would do that by modifying this chisel. If you look closely at this chisel, it's got safe edges on both sides, and this perfect angle right here for your thumb. So theoretically, if I was able to match this edge like the edge, I would have a tool that I would be able to make more fine adjustments. In order to modify this, what I would do is I would take metal files and I would grind down the beveled edge, keeping this edge straight, but grind down this edge to where it is a chiseled edge, like so. And I would use files to remove that material, and then I would use progressive grits of sandpaper, as we saw in the last video, moving up from material removal to finishing, or smoothing, finishing, and polishing to make a nice sharp edge on the side of this chisel in order to do the work that we need it to do. Some of the safety considerations when modifying tools are obviously eye and ear pro, but you also want to make sure that you're in a stable workplace environment that is free and clear of debris around you. This will help mitigate the risk of you tripping, falling, slipping, whatever, and potentially causing serious injury to yourself with said tool. After modification, I would take a blank piece of wood and test how the tool worked before I did it on the final product, because this will help me make further modifications if needed to really get the desired effect that I want. When modifying the workpiece itself, the same general safety measures apply: the eye protection, ear protection, the workplace that's free and clear of debris. But when it comes down to operational safety measures, at the end of the day, you're just working with a piece of wood, and so operationally, it will remain safe and functional. That said, though, if you use an improper tool on it, you're not going to have as nice of a finish, whether it be more jagged, less ergonomic, doesn't feel as well in your arms. But other than that, there's really no operational safety issues when it comes to the modification itself. When it comes to professional application, being able to look at a tool and think to yourself, how can I make this tool better? How can I make this tool do what I need it to, even if it wasn't necessarily designed to do that in the first place? without damaging the structural integrity of the tool itself. And being able to do that shows sound professional judgment in tool selection and modification, because you're doing everything in a safer manner and you're planning things. So you're not just going on a whim and say, hey, well, if this doesn't work, then I'll try something else. No, you have a clear and precise thought process in place, and that is going to help you out in the long run. Modifying a tool versus purchasing a specialty tool could be good in two cases. One, if there's a specific need of that tool doing a specific task that there's really not a specialty tool out there for. And the other one is if that specialty tool, the cost of it far outweighs what you're actually needing, and you can get the job done as effective for less money by modifying the tool. This approach aligns with the principles taught in this course because you're making sound judgments, you're being safe, you're being professional, you're being efficient, and all that is going to play into the final product and the quality of that product. And that brings us to the end of this video. Once again, my name is Joe with Tufel Gun and Armory. And if you like this video and want to check out some of my others, feel free to visit my page and go ahead and click that subscribe bell. It's the best way that we grow together. I'll catch y'all next time.